Howdy guys, our Scoop coming at you with a deck tech here for Teysa Karlov. Alright, so she's a 4-drop in Orzhov Colors 2/4, who we will be very rudely abusing. Her abilities. Her abilities are, if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink. We can already tell that this deck's going to go in a somewhat aristocrat type theme, but that is not all we will be doing in this deck. You can actually win the game by attacking, not just sitting back waiting to set up some sort of combo to drain the table or what have you. So, before I get into the deck tech, first let me explain power levels of the decks that I create in the power level of this deck. Due to my play group, we are a little bit, really call us competitive at all, actually. So the power level of our decks, the person with the highest power level will be right around like 85-ish%. I try to theme all of my, not theme, but place all my decks anywhere between 75 to 85% as best I can, depending on how rude or how much fun I want to have. Because sometimes you play a deck just to have fun, not actually win. Some people call that jank. This deck sometimes can play out and feel like a strong 80%er. Other hands, it kind of plays out feeling like a 70%er. So I would place this deck at a solid 75%, give or take. But you can test it out and try it for yourself, or just look at it and maybe you're good enough to know that, yeah, you know, this is jank. Another quick disclaimer, since this deck is still in testing for me, you can use it as your primer if you want, or just overlook it. I will nothing but proxies in this deck. These are all just printed off pieces of paper cut out because my play group does not mind it, thankfully. So who wants to straight buy out a deck and waste your money if you don't even know if you'll like it yet? So anyway, feel about that how you will. I will leave links in the description to check this deck out on Tapped Out. If you want to copy and paste and go from there, if you just want something to look at as a primer and edit, yada yada, go for it. There's definitely space for additional cards in this deck that you could exchange here and there. Also, for those of you who are just interested in looking at creature base, mana base, instant sorceries, etc., I will leave links in the description to jump straight ahead. Alright, so before we get into the deck, let me point out a few all-stars aside from Teysa Karlov herself. Let's go ahead and move our general right up there. First one, our main card draw, if not our only, it's not our only, but it is our main card draw, of course, is Skull Clamp here. Skull Clamp is a 1-drop artifact, equip 1. Equip creature gets +1, -1, so if you create a little 1/1 token, you can kill it by equipping it. Here's the catch. Whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. Now, if you have Teysa out, this is already great. But if you have Teysa out there, that's, hey, get rid of that 1/1 with this card, and now draw 4 cards. That is great. That is great. And if you don't think that's great, I'm sorry. We're just going to leave these little honorable mentions or all-stars in the top right. The next one, since we will be creating a lot of tokens in this deck to abuse our creature tokens have Vigilance and Lifelink, of course, we're going to be running a Divine Visitation. 5-drop enchantment, if one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. So if Teysa gets removed, they'll just lose lifelink. They'll still be flying Vigis. As we go through the deck, you will realize there are so many cards that this will take advantage of, on top of Teysa already doubling up the amount of angels that will create there. Next, Revel in Riches, 5-drop enchantment again. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token with sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. That's great, but what we really care about here is the second win con, because the second half of the ability, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Now, keep in mind, this is whenever a creature an opponent controls dies. Okay, so that's a death trigger, so Teysa doubles that up. So it has to be an opponent's creature, but whenever that does happen, if a board wipe happens, and this is out along with Teysa, you're probably going to win the game if it makes it back to you, because Teysa will double this ability. So whenever a creature dies, you would get 2 treasures. And at the very least, you can use those treasures to help you cast any of your other cards that you wish to cast in this deck. So I'll just leave those over there. And now we're going to jump straight into our lands here to try and push this deck tech along. Now we're running 37 lands. I haven't really... So there'd be some times where you're waiting on the correct mana to come out, but once you get it, I really haven't struggled with mana in this deck. There's actually quite a few times I find myself having too much mana, just sitting there trying to find something to do. So on that note, we are running 11 plains. Getting to our basic land package here, we're running 11 plains and 10 swamps here. So that's our basic package, so a total of 21 basics. Now we're going to get into a little bit more juicier lands here, looking at a command tower, of course, because we are commander players, whether you wish to admit it or not, you Elder Dragon Highlanders. Command tower, it taps for 1 mana of any color of your commander's identity. So it's basically rainbow, if you think about it. Some people will argue with that. It's not rainbow. But yeah, you get it. Now we're going to be running Temple of Silence, which is Orzhov tap land, but it's a scry land. So whenever it enters the battlefield, it comes in tapped, yes, but you get to scry 1. So you can look at top card, decide to leave it there. Hey, you got too many lands, it's a land, put it on bottom. So that's great. Next is Isolated Chapel. Isolated Chapel is, again, Orzhov colors, but it comes into field tapped unless you control a plains or a swamp. Now we will be looking at a Godless Shrine. Shock land here, so when it enters the battlefield, it'll come in tapped unless you pay 2 life. So you can turn 1 play it and don't worry about paying the 2 life, or turn 1 play a land that comes in tapped, turn 2 pay 2 life to come in with Godless Shrine to get out something on turn 2 to play on curve, depending on whatever you're doing and how competitive you are trying to play, or if you're just trying to make a cool play. It's up to you, man. It's just your world. Baron Moor. Now this enters battlefield tap is only a swamp. What we really care about here is the cycling ability tacked onto it there at the bottom. So if we have too many lands and we draw into this, or we're just holding this in our hand in case we might need a land or we might need to draw a card. So this card basically replaces itself if you don't use it for 1 swamp. So you discard it and then you draw another card. Fetid Heath. Now this is a filter land. By itself it taps for 1 colorless mana. Or you could pay 1 white or black, tap it, and then you can get any combination of the 2. Next is Bojuka Bog. It enters tapped, but when it enters the battlefield, you exile all cards from target player's graveyard. It also taps for a swamp. So this is great if someone else is running graveyard recursion or anything rude like that, or someone's about to steal stuff out of someone's graveyard anywhere, or even yours. You could just play Bojuka Bog and exile it. It would be painful to exile your own graveyard, but that is a thing. Could be a thing, I mean. Windbrisk Heights. It's a hideaway land, so this comes in tapped, and when it does, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. You choose one of them and put it face down underneath this land. The rest go on the bottom of your library. This land by itself taps for 1 white mana, or you can tap 1 white mana and tap this land, and then you get to play the exile card without paying its mana cost. But you can only do that if you attacked with 3 more creatures this turn. That's great because then you can hide a Divine Visitation, a Revel in Riches underneath it. Turn 3 or turn 4, swing in with 3 creatures, pay 1, tap it, and play a 5-drop for free. Next, we're going to be looking at a High Market. This land taps for a colorless in itself, or you could tap it, sack a creature, and gain 1 life. We're going with the whole sack theme. Why not include a sack ability on our lands? Speaking of, here's another one. Phyrexian Tower. It's a legendary land, taps for 1 colorless in itself, or you could tap it, sacrifice a creature, and get 2 swamps. It's a great land. It's a great land when we have the creatures to throw at this land or any other ability that we will have amongst our deck. So next is Buried Ruin. Now this land taps for 1 colorless in itself. What we really care about here is the 2 and tap, sacrifice Buried Ruin, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So you could return Skull Clamp back to your hand if somebody had removed it, or any of your other artifacts will be running. We're not really running too many artifacts. Skull Clamp is just our all-star, and we do have tutors for artifacts in this deck, so there are a couple artifacts aside from Skullclamp in here. Next, speaking of Skullclamp, drawing all those cards, we're going to need unlimited hand size. That's what we have Reliquary Tower for. You have no maximum hand size. It taps for 1 mana for itself. Now, when we're looking at these lands that tap for colorless mana, one thing that makes that a lot better is an Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Each land is a swap in addition to its other land types. So what that means is that your colorless lands can now tap for a swamp as well as their colorless ability. And they will also not just be a land, that would be land-swamp now. This would not just be legendary land, it'd be legendary land-swamp. That's why it doesn't say it taps for a swamp, because its ability makes it able to tap for a swamp. Not sure if you're aware of the Urborg combo or whatnot with the other, its partner in crime land, but just pointing it out in case it's new to you, for those of us newer Magic players. Speaking of its partner in crime, that is Cabal Coffers. 2 mana, tap this, and then you get 1 swamp to your mana pool for each swamp you control. Now, yes, we're only running 10 basic swamps, but this doesn't say for each basic swamp you control. It says for each swamp you control. So Urborg makes every land for everyone a swamp. So say you have 10 lands, cool, tap 2, now you tap 2, tap this, and now you got 10 mana just sitting there. This is basically an 8 mana card at that point. Great little combo there. If ever you're running one, you should be running the other. Next, closing up our list, we're looking at a Maze of Ith. This land does not tap for any mana on its own, so technically we are running 36 lands. Now, this land is great because of this ability. It is great for politicking, which is tap, untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. You can use it as a way to save your own creatures. The main thing is, if someone's playing Voltron or someone's got a really big Stompy out there, tell them, hey, don't swing here, it's just going to be a waste of time, I'm going to untap your creature. They're like, oh yeah, he's right, da-da-da-da. So then you dodge that bullet, and you have them swinging somewhere else doing your job for you. Do my bidding, Teysa. Alright, now, what's better? What could the last land possibly be that could be better than any of these other lands that I have shown you? Thespian Stage. Pay 2 and tap it, it becomes a copy of target land, except it gains this copy ability. Now it taps for 1 colorless in itself, and this does come in untapped. So you could potentially create 2 Cabal Coffers. The catch here also is, if you're behind on lands, and someone has like a crazy land out there that taps for multiple mana, you can use this card to copy that card. Or you could copy Cabal Coffers, and then you could have 2 coffers, and you could just be rude. You could be rude like that. Or if somebody else has Urborg and coffers out, you could just copy their coffers, since if you may have not found your coffers yet. Or say you have, and then you just go crazy, and then it'll be like 5 coffers on board between 3 people. That is it for our land package now. We're going to jump straight into the meat and potatoes. That will be our creatures. Now, first of these creatures, we are running a total of 36, and 11 of those are sack outlets. Now, 5 of which are free of cost. The other 6 are conditional, quote-unquote, as in you have to pay for their sack ability in some type of way via tapping or paying mana, or it's an ETB trigger. We got 10 token generators, 4 win cons, 2 removal creatures, I think like 4 recursion creatures. We got like 6 tutors in these creatures. But anyway, let's just get right into it, starting it off strong with the Sidisi, the Undead Vizier. Now, he's a 5-drop, 4/6 Death Touch, but he has an exploit, which is the ETB ability. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. When Sidisi Vizier exploits a creature, you may search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So there's one of our tutors, so I guess we're running 7. Next is our Hell's Caretaker. He's a 4-drop 1/1 with a tap ability, sacrifice a creature, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So there's a little recursion in a sack ability. Activate this ability only during your upkeep. So we're looking at a Priest of Forgotten Gods, a 2-drop 1/2 with a tap sack ability. sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of players each lose 2 life and sack a creature. You get 2 black mana and draw a card. It's a great ability. We will have the creatures at our disposal to sack 2 and not have to think twice about it. So don't worry about that. Next, we have an Eily Eternal Pilgrim. 2-drop, 2/3 Death Toucher. We had to pay 1 for her sack ability, and it's another creature, not herself. Sacrifice another creature, you gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. Next, we're going to look at our other ability. 2 Orzhov, 1 colorless. Sacrifice another creature, exile target non-land permanent. You can only activate this ability if you have at least 10 or more life than your starting life total. That's not too hard, seeing as we revolve around tokens, and Teysa gives them lifelink. Next, we are looking at a Burnished Heart. Now, it's a 3-drop. 2/2, pay 3, sacrifice him. Search your library for 2 basic land cards. Put them onto the battlefield tapped. And then you shuffle your library. Next is another 3-drop, 2/2. Intimidate. We had to pay for his sack ability, which is 1 swamp, 1 colorless. Sacrifice another creature. Put 2 1/1 counters on Flesh Carver. When Flesh Carver dies, put an XX Black Horror creature token onto the battlefield, where X is Flesh Carver's power. So, this pay ability does not trigger twice, but this death ability does trigger twice. So whenever he dies, he's Afterlife 2, and the power and toughness of those creatures will be equal to his power. So pay 2, he instantly becomes a 4/4, and then whenever he dies, you can keep redoing it, and however big he gets, you just get not 1, but 2 because of Teysa, 2 big old tokens. Unfortunately, though, for that, in that situation, if you have a Divine Visitation out, and say he was like a 20/20 or something crazy, Divine Visitation would cancel out that 20/20, and it would become a 4/4 instead. Keep that in mind. I have not ran into that issue as of yet. Next, we'll be looking at the rest of our sack creatures that are free of cost, meaning we can sacrifice whenever we want without having to worry about tapping or paying some sort of cost. First one up, Cartel Aristocrat, Orzhov colors, 2/2, 2-drop. Sacrifice another creature. Cartel Aristocrat gains protection from the color of your choice till the end of turn. What we really care about here is more so towards we could just sack another creature whenever we want, as much as we want. Next is a Sadistic Hypnotist. 5-drop, 2/2. Sacrifice another creature. Target player discards 2 cards. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Now, this ability is nice because it gives us a way when we have a plethora or too many tokens to deal with. It gives us a way to empty out our opponent's hands to force all of them to start top decking and get any filthy tricks they have out of their nasty little hands. Next, we're looking at a Carrion Feeder. He's a 1-drop, 1/1 that cannot block. He's never been one for it, but what we really care about is his sack another creature, put a 1/1 counter, and Carrion Feeder. Next up is a Yahini 3-drop, 2/2 Haster. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a 1/1 counter on Yahini Undying Partisan. Sacrifice another creature. Yahini gains indestructible to the end of turn. Now, this second ability is free of cost, and we can just sacrifice any of our creatures whenever we want, which is exactly what we want. But the other top ability is nice because it doubles up from Teysa because it is a death ability. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a 1/1 counter on him. So whenever a creature anybody else controls dies, he will actually get 2 1/1 counters, which is nice, and then we can sack our fodder to keep him from ever dying. Next up is a Viscera Seer, a 1-drop 1/1 with sacrifice a creature, scry 1. Honestly, I think that's better than the Aristocrat. I guess with the Aristocrat, if somebody is trying to remove our sack outlets, at least we can sack something and give her protection from the removal they're using, I suppose. Viscera Seer, though, is nice because whenever you sack a creature, you can set up the top card of your library. I prefer to do shenanigans like that, but that's just me. Next, we are going to be moving into our token generators. keep in mind as I go forth from here, Divine Visitation. So whatever tokens these would be generating, it would actually be 4/4 angels. First up is a 1-drop 1/1 Doomed Traveler. Whenever he dies, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So generally these token generators with these afterlife type abilities will be the ones that we are sacking and using as fodder to get their tokens to do other crazy things and shenanigans to pull them back out of the graveyard and keep reusing them for their tokens plus whatever benefits we get from sacking. If you were not aware, that is what we are going for. Next up is practically the same thing, a Hunted Witness. Now he is a 1-drop 1/1 with whenever he dies, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink, which is basically Afterlife 1, which is just introduced in Ravnica. Up next, speaking of, we have a 3-drop 2/1 Afterlife 2. So, whenever this one dies, he creates 2 tokens. Now, keep in mind that these are whenever they die, so Teysa will double trigger these. So, dies create 2, dies create 2, dies create 4. Oh, 4 what? 4 angels. 4 angels. Flying, vigilance, lifelink. What more could we ask for? A tithe taker, I guess. He's a 2-drop 2. During your turn, spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast. And abilities your opponents activate cost 1 more to activate. So if your opponents want to do anything on your turn, Tithe Taker is going to make it cost 1 more mana. And he has Afterlife 1. So Teysa Afterlife 2. Next up, we have a Hallowed Spirit Keeper. Afterlife before Afterlife was a thing? Question mark. Hallowed Spirit Keeper is a 3-drop 3/2 vigilance creature. Here's what we care about. Whenever he dies, put X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield. X is equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So he will always see at least himself. So he is a 3-drop 3/2 vigilance Afterlife minimum 1. So we have all these other tokens in graveyard. So then that'll be 5 tokens we're going to make. Teysa sees that as a death trigger, doubles it up, so then we'll make 10 of them. Divine Visitation sees it as tokens, said, nah, you're not going to get 10 1/1s. You're going to get 10 4/4s. See the little crazy fun shenanigans we have here? Next is Alinda the Dusk Rose, a 4-drop in Orzhov colors. She's a 1/1 with lifelink. Doesn't sound too great at first, but here's the catch. Both of her abilities trigger off of Teysa. Now what are they? Whenever another creature dies, put a 1/1 counter on Alinda. So Teysa, she gets 2 1/1 counters. Next, whenever Alinda dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Alinda's power. So she can grow exponentially off of Teysa with her first death trigger. The next one, she creates a crap ton of tokens, and then Divine Visitation like, hey, tokens, and then Teysa's like, cool. And it's just one big happy Orzhov family. Next up is Ophiomancer. Now this card is great if you have Divine Visitation out, and it's just great in general because if you have a sack outlet, you can sack something freely every turn. Ophiomancer 3-drop 2/2. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, put a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. At the beginning of each upkeep. So that's if you're playing a multiplayer game on everyone's upkeep. When I say multiplayer, I mean over 4 players. So that's a lot of value you'll be generating. If you have Divine Visitation out, by the time it gets back to you, you'd have at least 5+ angels that you could swing at someone and half their life totals, if not kill them. That speaks for itself. Or if you have a nice little sack outlet out on the battlefield on everybody's turn, you could be, at the end of each player's turn, you could be sacrificing a creature to whatever sacrifice ability you have, because you'll just create another snake, because then you'll control no snakes. Next up is a Requiem Angel, 6-drop 5/5 flyer. Whenever another non-spirit creature you control dies, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Okay, let me explain this. So let's say we have Requiem Angel out, Divine Visitation out. So if a token will be created, it's an angel instead. Okay. So let's just grab any of our token generators here. Let's go with the Doom Traveler. Sacrifice our Doom Traveler to one of our sacrifice abilities. Create a spirit. Oh, it's not a spirit. So, because Divine Visitation sees it, now we have an angel. Now, instead of one angel, we have two angels because of Teysa. Requiem Angel triggers because it was a non-spirit creature that died. You get a 1/1 white spirit creature token. Okay, this is going to trigger. Then you'll get two more. So then Doom Traveler himself would produce a total of 4 angels. That goes either way. Correct me if I'm wrong. If whenever another non-spirit creature you control dies. Because it is a death trigger. Teysa doubles that up. And then we just... Oh my goodness. Angels. Angels everywhere. What? Are we playing an angel deck? Or are we playing Teysa's 1/1 spirits? Who knows? Who knows? I'm telling you, once you pull this off once, it's going to be so rude, no one's ever going to let you pull it off again. Next up, we have an Overseer of the Damned. He also doubles up as removal. Okay, Overseer of the Damned is a 7-drop 5/5 flyer. Whenever he enters the battlefield, you get to destroy target creature. Whenever another creature an opponent controls dies, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. That says whenever. Whenever is a hint that it is a death trigger, meaning Teysa can double up on it. So whenever a creature an opponent controls dies that isn't a token, you get two black 2/2 zombies. Or Divine Visitation, you'll make 2/4/4 angels. And on top of that, he himself has a way of creating it upon his ETB because he could destroy a creature. Next up, looking at removal still, is Teysa, Envoy of Ghost. What? Do we have double vision? What? What is this? 2 Teysas? Nah. Anyway, Teysa, Envoy of Ghost, 7-drop 4/4 Vigilance, protection from creatures. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature. Put a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So this is nice little protection. This will make people not want to swing at you, because then they're just going to lose their creature unless it's indestructible, but then we'll have answers for that in our library as well. Next, we will be taking a look at our WinCon creatures, which we have 4 of. First one up is Kukasho, the Evening Star. Now, he's a 6-drop 5/5 flyer. Here's what we care about. Whenever he dies, so that's a triggered ability for Teysa, each opponent loses 5 life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. Back that up. If Teysa's out there, each opponent loses 10 life, and you're going to gain the amount of life lost. Aetherflux Reservoir, ? We're not running it. But it's still a great card. Next up is a Zulaport Cutthroat. Now, he's a 2-drop 1/1 with whenever is a keyword to let you know it's a death ability that Teysa can copy. So whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. What's a great ability to follow that up? Let's look at his twin brother over here, Blood Artist. He's a 2-drop 0/1. Whenever he or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. What's that same ability? Let's recur it again. A Falkenrath Noble, this time at 4-drop. 2/2 flyer. Whenever he or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So these two are basically the same. Zulaport Cutthroat is better ideally here because he reads each opponent, where these read target opponent. But if you can infinitely recur it through ways that I've already explained or other ways, this is the aristocrats right here, by the way, if you did not know, where you drain down your opponents. At least so I've been told. So you just start sacking your things instantly and infinitely, reoccurring it, and then everybody's going to lose life because you're going to establish an infinite through, oh, move, sack this creature, bring it back, sack this, bring it back, sack this, bring, etc. But those are our potential quote-unquote win cons through our creatures. Next, we're going to be looking at a little bit more removal here with a 3-drop Merciless Executioner, a 3/1. When he ETBs, each player sacrifices a creature, including yourself. So you can sacrifice one of your token generators or you could sack him to his own ability and just use it as removal. If someone's running Voltron, it's hexproof, it's indestructible, blah, blah, blah. Then a Sigarda comes out and you're crying because this can't be sacked. And I'm joking. Anyway, Leonin Relic Water. Now, the first thing you're going to think is combo. If you're that type of player, we are running that combo. But I want to really explain that combo. Anyway, when he enters the battlefield, you may exile target artifact or enchantment. And when he leaves the battlefield, return the exile card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Now, this is great if someone's playing control magic and they're stealing away your visitation, your revel in riches, and like, oh, I'm going to do that now. You could play Leonin Relic Water, exile it off of their board, and then sack him to one of our sack abilities or chump block with him, whatever it is you want to do. Get him to die or leave the battlefield. Whenever he leaves the battlefield, it will return your enchantment artifact or whichever one, wherever, to its owner's control. Meaning, if they stole one of ours, it would come back to us. If we stole one of theirs, it would go back to them. Next up, we are going to be looking at our recursion package here, which starting off with an Athreos, God of Patches, 3-drop, 5/4 indestructible. As long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, he's not a creature. That's not what we care about. What we care about here is this nifty little whenever clause, because it doubles off Teysa. Whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. Teysa doubles that up to 6 life, so whenever any of your creatures die, hey, pay 6 life or it's mine. Also, keep in mind, a player cannot pay an amount of life that would cause them to die. So if someone's at 2 life or less, you can say, hey, you want to pay this? And regardless of what it would say, you're just being rude because they cannot pay it. So you would automatically bounce that creature back to your hand. Keep that in mind. That works for some people's infinites or just pure value town. Athreos is rude. Next, we're running a Sun Titan, a 6-drop, 6/6 vigilance. Whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, this ability obviously doesn't go with Teysa, but it's great. You can grab a land from your graveyard, you can reoccur any of your token generators, or get back a sack outlet if somebody has killed it. And then you could also just keep redoing it every time he attacks. Next up is Ravos the Soul Tender. He's a 5-drop Orzhov Colors 2/2 flyer. He's a lord, so other creatures you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. What's better than graveyard to hand? Reassembling Skeleton. He's a 2-drop 1/1. At instant speed, you could pay 1 swamp and 1 colorless. Return him from your graveyard to the battlefield. Tapped. So you could produce infinite mana and you can infinitely drain someone aristocrat style. Whatever it is you want to do with Reassembling Skeleton. You sack him for some sort of mana or any effect. He goes to graveyard. If you have enough mana, you bring him back. And then you can keep redoing it. It's an infinite ETB and infinite death triggers. However you want to look at that, combo player or not, he's just a great card because he works well with our deck having so many sack outlets. Next up, we are going to be looking at our creature tutors here. Starting off with land tutoring. Weathered Wayfarer. 1-drop 1/1, pay 1 white, tap them, search your library for a land card. That's any land. Does not have to be basic. You reveal it and put it into your hand. Then you shuffle your library. Play this ability only if an opponent controls more lands than you. So you could skip a land drop intentionally just to trigger this card off. Whatever you prefer. I would say arguably worth it. If you're going last, then most definitely worth it. You don't even have to skip the land drop, but here's the way you would want to do it. You would want to do it at the end of someone's turn just before your turn. So tap him, go grab an Urborg, your turn comes around, he untaps. Before you draw or after you draw, they still have more land, so before you play a land, tap him again, because you've untapped already, and go grab your coffers. So that's the easy way to go grab your land combo out. Or you could just use them a little bit at a time. Someone else has an Urborg, they played an early Urborg, or they do, or they're ramping like crazy. This card is just a great card. It's pricey for a reason. Next up is Stoneforge Mystic, looking at our Skull Clamp tutor and amongst our creature here. 2-drop 1/2 ETB, you may search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And then at instant speed, you could pay 1 white, 1 colorless, tap her, put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. Now, I doubt you will ever really use this ability because Skull Clamp is so cheap that whenever you cast Stoneforge Mystic, pretty sure you're just going to play Skull Clamp the same turn, or just play it the next turn for 1 instead of paying 2 to play it. Granted, you could play it at instant speed if that matters to you. I mean, we're not running a Vidalcan Ori, but it could be a card you throw in. Next is an Academy Rector looking at our Enchantment Tutor. Whenever it's put into a graveyard from play, you may remove Academy Rector from the game. Keep in mind, this does trigger twice with Teysa. The trigger for whenever she's put into a graveyard from play happens twice. But you can only exile her once, so she only works for 1 enchantment, not 2. Just want to clarify that. If you do exile her from the game whenever she should die, search your library for an enchantment card. So any enchantment card, and you put it straight into play. Not to hand, straight into play. That's why she's so weak for a 4-drop. So we could sack her to one of our sack abilities, we could chump block with her, we could do whatever it is we want to do with the nice Academy Rector. Giggity. And then go get a Divine Visitation, or we can go get our nice little answer to other people's beefy boards, which we will look at when we get into our enchantment package. Now we're going to look at our creature tutors. Here I'm going to need to clear the board and do a little bit of editing because Ranger of Eos, whenever he enters the battlefield, you may search your library for up to 2 creature cards with CMC 1 or less. Reveal them, put them into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. 4-drop 3/2 to go tutor out 2 1 or less creatures. Now, I do plan on putting back in a Walking Ballista. He is a double X creature, so you could search him out because technically his CMC would be, during the time of checking, 0. Now, edit. Here are all of our 1 or less creature cards. Now, what do you need? You can get 2. If you want 2 sack outlets, 2 token generators, you want a tutor for lands, whatever it is you need, you drop this bad boy, you go get 2 of them. You can go get 1 token generator and 1 sack outlet because you have everything else you need. Say you already have token generators, you go grab 2 sack outlets, go grab a sack outlet and land tutoring. Whatever it is that you could possibly want, you can grab right there with Eos. He just turns our deck online so much more to help us find that last little edge. Now next up is going to be Recruiter of the Guard, a 3-drop 1/1 ETB. Search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less. Reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Oh, I don't remember which cards were 2 or less. That's fine. I got you. Here we go. Edit. What is it you're looking for? Do you want removal? Do you want sack outlets? Do you want your token generators? Do you want your win cons? Do you want your recursions? Do you want other tutors? This card would literally grab us just about anything we could possibly want to finish. So the catch is that it's to your hand, but that's really not much of a catch for 3. It's practically a tutor for whatever possible thing we could want, seeing as our deck is majority creatures. Don't know what more you could ask for. So with that, we're going to move into our 9 creature package. So starting off with our 26/9 creature spells, we're going to throw out our 1 walker because we're running tokens and we have access to white, so we might as well. Elspeth's Unchampion, 6-drop with 4 loyalty. What we really care here is her +1. Put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. So those will get Vigilance and Lifelink from Teysa. And if you have Divine Visitation out, you'll create 3 4/4 angels. What more can you want? She also comes in as a possible board wipe. Destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. And her ultimate is nice, but we don't really care too much about it. You get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have flying. So there's that. Moving on from there, if anytime you tutor with Academy Rector or any other tutor, you're more than likely going to be grabbing Divine Visitation. If you do not, here is what you'll be grabbing. Dictate of Erebos. Now with our sack outlets and this triggering off of Teysa, this is our way of controlling the rest of the board in the game outside of you don't get any creatures. So whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. This is a 5-drop. Yes, it is also flash. So you can flash it in at any time. Instant speed, basically. An instant speed permanent. So like I said, Teysa does double trigger Dictator Erebos. You can throw in a Grave Pact if you want to double up this ability. It's nice, I know. Look at Revel in Riches. So whenever they die, that would also double trigger. So Revel in Riches and Dictate, Teysa, it's so much goodness. Next, anytime we're running a token deck and we have access to white, we should absolutely be running an Anointed Procession. A 4-drop enchantment. If an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, creates twice that many tokens instead. Keep in mind, Revel in Riches is a treasure token. Teysa, doubling. So creature dies, you're not going to get 1 token, you're going to get 2. You're not going to get 2, you're going to get 4. That's nice. And then look at Elspeth. Elspeth comes in. You're not going to get 3 1/1s, you're going to get 6 1/1s. That's very nice. You're not going to get 1/1s, you're going to get 4 4s, 6 4 4s. This is just a possible interaction. There's so many more that we have. Moving on, we have a Bitter Blossom. A 2-drop enchantment, great to play on curve. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. But you also create a 1/1 Black Fairy Rogue creature token with flying. And if you're that worried about the 1 life, if Teysa's out, they get lifelink anyway, so you can gain your life right back. Also, Divine Visitation with Bitter Blossom would just mean that at the beginning of each of your upkeep, you're creating another 4/4 angel. It's nice. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And in Procession, you're creating 2 instead on your upkeep. Next, we're going to be looking at Smothering Tide. Just a nice little booster to our Revel in Riches. Is 4-drop. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 mana. If they don't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token. It's another treasure. It is a token. Anointed Procession will double it. And it's just nice because nobody's going to pay 2 to stop you from getting a mana. They don't really care. They just want to draw their card and do their thing. Unless they just have so much mana, then I guess they care. Or unless you have Revel of Riches out already and they're like, oh no, I can't let that happen. But anyway, moving on, still staying on the mana theme here. Black Market for 5. Whenever Teysa trigger, whenever means Teysa, whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you get swap equal to the amount of charge counters on Black Market. So 1 creature dies, you're going to get 2 counters for Teysa. And so then on your turn, how many ever counters are on here? Say you have like 8 counters on here. On your pre-combat main phase, you're going to get 8 swamps to do with as you please. So you'll find yourself swamped in the swamps. So Dance of the Dead, it is an enchantment. It is a long one. It's a 2-drop. Basically, you choose any creature in any graveyard and you put it onto the battlefield under your control. It gets +1/+1. But it comes in tapped. And it does not untap unless during your upkeep you pay 1 swamp and 1 colorless to untap it. If Dance of the Dead is ever removed from the game, since it is an aura, or removed from the battlefield, that creature is also destroyed. That's it for our enchantments aside from Revel in Riches and Divine Visitation that we have already gone over. Let's look at our instants. First up is Swords to Plowshare. It's a commander staple. A 1-drop exile target creature at instant speed. That is amazing. It gets around so much protection. But the catch is its controller gains life equal to its power. Now there are very wonky times where you will use this swords on your own creature. Yes, I said on your own creature so you can gain enough life to stay alive. In our deck, where we can sacrifice creatures to make our carrion feeder a lot bigger than he should be, you can just use it to gain a lot of life to turn on your Eily. If you have a, I don't know, Aetherflux Reservoir on board, you can use that to get your Death Star online and start beaming people down. Whatever you wish to do. Instant speed, removal, great. Speaking of removal, staying on theme, a 3-drop Orzhov, exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. Now, it's great because it's a non-land permanent, so we can hit anything. We don't have to worry about it just being creature removal, just being artifact or enchantment removal. or etc., etc. It does not touch lands, though. What's better than that? A 4-drop instant. Orzhov colors, 4 mana, exile target non-land permanent. This time you do not lose 3 life. That's why I guess it costs 1 more. Plus Zur, go, Helm Smasher. Anyway, looking at Return to Dust, a 4-drop, double white, instant exile target artifact or enchantment. But if you cast this during your main phase, you can exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment. So it's any combination of the 2 for 2. So you can exile 2 artifacts, exile 2 enchantments, exile an artifact and an enchantment, or just do it once. Whatever it is you prefer. Staying on to our tutors. Enlightened Tutor. A 1-drop instant, search your library for an artifact or enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle your library, then put that card on top of it. Now, the way you're going to want to be using these tutors is either during your upkeep, right before you draw, you pop this tutor so you rig up your next draw, or at the end of a player's turn if you want to untap with the mana. You will, at the end of their turn, you will play this so it goes straight into your library. You do not want to do it on your turn if you are not going to draw that card, because then there are some cards out there. Target player mills 1 card, so then you put the card on top, they know it's coming, they prepare for it, they save mana to counter it, or they mill you out of it, etc., etc. I'm saying that because it's relevant, because it will turn this $90 card into a useless card. It's probably like, what, 60 no dollars now. Vampiric Tutor, 1-drop instant in Swamp, search your library for a card, and then shuffle your library, put that card on top of it. You lose 2 life. It's instant speed. It's a tutor to the top of your deck. Next is Protection. What type of protection? Teferi's Protection. 3-drop instant speed until your next turn. You basically disappear from the game. That's it. You disappear. So until your next turn, your life total cannot change. You have protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. Now, when you phase out, your tokens also phase out, meaning they do not disappear. They just don't exist. So your tokens do remain. I feel I should clarify that for some argument's sake. Whenever you're done casting this, you got to exile Teferi's Protection. It does not go to graveyard. There's no recurring this unless you copy it. Next up, we're looking at our sorceries. We're going to go straight into our tutors with a Diabolic Intent, a 2-drop sorcery speed as an additional cost. To cast this spell, you have to sacrifice a creature. That's fine in our deck. That is completely fine. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. Nice, we get to grab any card for 2 and put it straight into our hands. We can go find whatever missing link to our chain, whatever missing piece to our puzzle that we need. Whatever it is, we can go grab it. And we also can grab it with a Demonic Tutor. Same thing, but no sack. 2 mana, search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, shuffle your library. Up next is another 2-drop tutor. Open the Armory. Search your library for an aura, so we can grab our graveyard recursion, which is Dance of the Dead, or we can go grab our Skull Clamp, or we can grab another artifact that we will go over shortly. You reveal it, and then you put it into your hand, then you shuffle your library. If I can get this Dance of Dead off the screen. Next up is Victimize, a 3-drop. Choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard. Sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. So you choose the little 1/1 you have on the field, and then you choose 2 token generators or token generator, whatever it is in your graveyard, a sack outlet, and you return both of them to the battlefield, sack the 1 creature that you chose. Next is a board wipe. We have to run one. I would probably replace this with Merciless Eviction so it's more versatile if I were you. We want to always have some sort of answer in case somebody's outbuilding our board, or we haven't really built our board up and someone has beaten us to it. We want to wipe their board, then build ours. We can do that. It's a 4-drop, 2 swamps, destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. We don't really care much for wiping the board when we're trying to... There's so many pieces that we need out at once, and a lot of times we will be the ones getting board wiped instead of wiping someone else's board, because we have so many other ways to handle other people's boards that we don't need to actually hurt ourselves in the process. Our final sorcery is our potential win con with so much mana. You don't even have to produce infinite, but you can. Torment of Hellfire. 2 swamps in X. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So the catch to this card is you get so much mana that 1, it works as a board wipe, and 2, it acts as a win. What I mean by that is that you could make X any number. You have a plethora amount of mana. You make it something ridiculous like unlimited, 100, or reasonably in our deck we could drop it down for like 15 or something like that when we get a lot of mana, or even higher than that. We can go up to like 30 or 40 in our deck. So basically, you look at your opponent, you say, hey, if you don't want to lose 3 life, either sack a non-land permanent or discard a card. Okay, you do that? Cool. Do it again 29 more times. And then if they run out of things to sacrifice, so no more non-land permanents, and they run out of cards to discard, they're going to have to start taking the 3 life. So eventually you get it so high that they can only sack so many things, and they died to taking the 3 life. That is how Torment of Hellfire works. If you did not know, it can be very rude. Sometimes I will drop this card like mid-game for just like 6 or something like that to force people, hey, you can lose life, or you can discard your hand or start removing their board. This is another way to get around someone's board. I don't care too much for dropping for unlimited or some ridiculously high cost. It is a potential win, though, if your game is dragging out, you top deck this card and you're like, oh nice, I have something to pour this so much mana into. Speaking of mana, artifacts, Soul Ring, a 1-drop, taps for 2. Commander staple, Moment of Silence, Soul Ring. Alright, and now we're back looking at more mana. Ashnod's Altar, a 3-drop artifact, sacrifice a creature, add 2 mana to your mana pool. This is a combo piece, yes, I'm aware. It's also a sack outlet on something aside from a creature for us, and it gives us mana in the process. Finally, we're looking at another combo piece, which is also nice that you can use without it being a combo piece. Nim Death Mantle. It is the final card in the deck tech, guys. We have made it, and gals. Nim Death Mantle, 2-drop, equipped creature gets +2/+2, has Intimidate, and it's a black zombie. What you really care about here for the infinite, if you're into that, whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 4 mana. If you do, return that to the battlefield and attach Nim Death Mantle into it. It's basically a regenerate almost, if you would, for 4. There are ways to go infinite with this by getting pure value in Ashnod's Altar. These two are practically a combo engine, by the way. With token generators, which we have, I will not point those out, so I will not spoil you and make your play group hate you. So I'll leave that on you. Other than that, guys, thank you for sticking through to the end unless you skipped here. I hope you found this video useful, or at the very least entertaining. Thank you so much for your support, guys, from beginning to end. It's because of you guys that I continue to make these. Sorry it's been such a while since my last video. I have been very busy. I've started up school. Life is just, the wheels are rolling, I suppose you could say. Thank you again. It means the world to me, guys. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. IR Scoop out.